what if I just figured something out about myself on your show?
I love it.
You're such a good host.
I'm taking this in my therapy this week. Today's guest is the composer and songwriter of Frog and Toad. Please welcome to the Zoom, Mark Evitts. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So on Behind the Resume, we always start by talking about how we met. And we actually met, well, we didn't technically meet at the SCL event. I just saw you speak and I enjoyed everything you had to say. And then I reached out to connect afterward.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was that was a great event. It was a panel with me, and I think they were like, it was a big one. It was like 6 other people, and we were all talking about like our shows that we've written, and like kind of our process on those shows, and like how we did that. Yeah, it was a really, really great fun event.
I learned so much. It was so cool because we got to see some of your work. And so they
Wow.
played the beautiful music from Frog and Toad. And my mom got excited too because I read those books growing up. So it was very nostalgic
Oh,
to see it on the big screen.
that's so cool to hear people say that. I didn't grow up with those books. I went out and got them and learned all about Arnold Lobel, the author of those books, and kind of really immersed myself from an adult perspective, which was really cool and interesting, and seeing all the efforts of simplicity and the efforts of every intricate way that Arnold Lobel phrased things. It really kind of guided me on how to write music for Frog and Toad. I tried to write simple music, but intricately, and thinking like how his approach, how can I make that my approach as well, to where it like kind of works off of each other. It was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. I can't wait to get into all of this. Let's start from the very beginning. Where are you from?
I'm from a riverboat town in Kentucky, town called Paducah, Kentucky, and I grew up there. I played. It's an interesting town because it's, like I said, it's a riverboat town, so it's like you have these interesting, like a melting pot of music. You've got Chicago influences coming down from coming down from the Mississippi River, and then you also have New Orleans influences. It's like the exact halfway point between Chicago and New Orleans on the Mississippi River.
Hmm.
But it's also Kentucky, so it's got this like bluegrass, Appalachian folk kind of thing that's kind of integrated as well. And Paducah is only 2 hours from Nashville, so there's like a lot of country. So it's this like sort of cauldron of sounds that kind of influenced me growing up. And it's a really great town to grow up in. And yeah, I started playing music in the middle school orchestra. I started playing violin in the middle school orchestra, and I went to a camp in Nashville when I was 15 years old that kind of taught classical kids how to play all these different styles: jazz, bluegrass, country, different like world music, that kind of stuff. And they had different classes at this camp. And so it was a kind of a life-changing event. I went to this camp and I learned how to improvise and how to write my own music, and how to
Wow.
think for my instrument, and how to use my instrument as my voice. And so it was like a pretty life-changing event that happened, that I still carry with me things from that today.
Wow. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have an older brother. He doesn't do music. He works for a railroad company, very Kentucky.
Oh,
He works
wow.
for a railroad company. It's funny because we have a great relationship. We always brag on each other. And my brother has this extremely intense job, and he gives me a hard time. He's like, "Well, I wish I could be playing music all the time." Yeah, and I really respect him and what he does, but he's probably my biggest fan, which is great. Yeah, he's super encouraging.
Were your parents musicians?
No, my mom was a telephone operator. She was a directory assistance operator, back in the day. And my dad was a truck driver. And it's funny, my dad was definitely the one that pushed me for my love of music. My dad was a country music like historian. He actually was on 2 different game shows for country music back in the 80s,
Wow.
like kind of like the grand champion for these game shows. And he did this thing. I don't think I've ever shared this, but he did this thing where he would when I was like learning how to play fiddle and I learned how to do this thing, my dad took me to these truck stops and he would say, hey, they have this like country jam at this truck stop. Go up and tell them you're going to play with them. And I was like, what do I play? And he goes, I don't know, just go up there and play. Who cares? So I go up, I'm like 15 years old. I've got like a violin fiddle, in my hand. And I'm like walking up on stage and I'm like, can I sit in with you guys? And they go, sure. What song do you play? And I didn't know what to say. So I just go, all of them. I don't know. And so they let me sit in for the rest of the night and I kind of improvised my way through it. And they asked me to come back. And then that's sort of my dad's like guiding hand to me. He didn't really know what to do other than just like push me in the deep end and say, learn to swim. And so it was sort of the opposite of my mother. My mother is also a big, she's everybody's very, very good to me and my family, and they're very kind and supportive of music, which is great. But my dad was definitely like the tough love, like just get out there and do it. I don't care what happens, but you're gonna try.
So you joined the band in middle school.
Yeah, the like school orchestra, right? Yeah.
Did you fall in love right away?
Yes. Violin was there was something about it that and it's funny because my parents tell me that I didn't sound very good at first, as most violinists don't. But I had this thing that said, this is something special. Like I really loved how I could play, and it was like a different language. It was like learning a new language and learning how to speak through violin. And I immediately had that. It was like I wasn't like the best player, but I really loved it and loved the language skills that it brought.
Was music the way that you felt you communicated your emotions as a middle schooler?
Yeah, I've never put it to middle school, but it was probably there probably is something to like, like a pubescent coming of age kind of thing that the violin did. In fact, this is a really weird thing, and if you're watching, you can see it. But if I put my hands together, so I did these finger stretching exercise. I practiced all the time, literally all the time, like 8 to 12 hours a day, constantly, because I didn't sound that great, but I loved it. And so I just constantly practiced. And I used to do these finger stretching exercises on violin. And because I was like growing still, and still my body's still kind of coming into what it is post pubescent, it actually, like if I put my hands together, and I'll show you this, it's like a really weird thing where my left hand is longer, the fingers are longer than the right hand. And I asked, or somebody noticed it. It was a doctor one time goes, there's something interesting. You have extended joints in your hand. He was like what do they call orthopedic surgeon or somebody, whoever works with hands. I can't remember what that's called. Anyway, he saw my hands. He goes, you have extended joints in your left hand. And I go, I do? And he said, put your hands together. So I did that. And he goes, yeah, your left hand's longer than your right hand. And I go, I told him, I go, I wonder if it's because I used to practice all the time. And he goes, did
Wow.
you ever do these stretching exercises? And I've asked other violinists, and maybe it's not true for everybody, but other violinists that had this similar kind of thing, they have it as well. And so it's this weird thing where my left hand fingers grew a little bit longer than my right hand fingers. So there's something
You must
not
have
just
practiced a lot.
I practiced all the time. I didn't have a life. It was just staying in my room and bedroom and practicing. But I think there is a thing that's like it changed me, like not just like emotionally, but like physically. It's like I'm tied to this thing now, and
Wow.
it's something that's like there are times I practice an instrument because I play a bunch of different. I play violin, viola, mandolin, guitar, piano, but I practice every single day, and it doesn't even matter what it is. It could be like a classical piece, or I could be practicing like literally just strumming chords to a song. But I try to just do it every day because there's like a release there that's this like emotional release, or it can get me into a mood of some sort. If I'm working on a film or whatever I'm working on, I could be producing a song. I want to get into that mood, and I find practicing and doing, just running through something, really makes me feel better. And it's this intrinsic, like, it's just, I'm tied to the instruments that I play.
Wow. What did you daydream about as a kid?
I really I really wanted to be on stage, and I really wanted to entertain people. I had one of me and my best friend, his name was John. We used to record ourselves at night. We would have these sleepovers, and we would record ourselves putting on shows. And we would, like, we literally have cassette tapes of this. We'd it was like cassette tapes where we would record ourselves doing like almost like a Tonight Show kind of like variety show. And then we would be our own musical entertainment, because he played violin as well. And we would be our own musical entertainment. We'd play a violin duet or something, and then we'd go back to doing it. Pretty hip kids, let me tell you.
Age was this?
We were probably 13,
Okay.
12, 13 years old, something
Uh-huh.
like that. But yeah, we would do this all the time. So I think I daydreamed of, just entertainment. I think it just constantly thinking of how to entertain people. And it probably comes from, like, honestly, if I'm being honest to myself, it probably comes from trying to make my parents laugh, and trying to make my parents, like, I see old home videos and stuff, and it's like me just like, my older brother is like pretty quiet, and I'm like definitely the one running around and trying to steal the attention. Pretty annoyingly so, watching back on it now. But that's probably what it was. It was probably trying to make my parents laugh, and daydreaming of entertaining.
Did you want to be an actor?
Never an actor. But music and comedy. I'm a massive fan of comedy, even though I have tried to put together like a stand-up act. I can't do it. It's so, it baffles me how these guys are. I'm such a huge fan. I've taken classes at the Groundlings,
Wow.
and tried to take, like, really study it, because I'm just a massive fan of comedy. But
My dad is too.
oh, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
He loves stand-up comedy and tries to write his own things too.
Oh, fantastic. Is your
Yeah.
dad, is he like an actor or a
No,
comedian?
no.
Is he doing?
No, he's a portfolio manager, but
Ah,
he like daydreams about, being a stand-up comedian.
yeah, I do too. And it's just something about it's again, it's the entertainment, it's probably because I'm trying to make my parents laugh, is probably what it is. But I've tried to do it. I've tried to write some stuff, but I'm pretty hard on myself for it, because it's like it's not like a Netflix special. So I'm like, yeah, this is garbage or whatever, but it's
so
tough.
admirable. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess that might have answered my question of, if you could live a completely different life, what would your career be? But would it be
Yeah,
to
it would be a comedian. I would definitely
wow.
try to go down that route. I'm a huge fan of not just stand up, but like I love improv comedy. I love sketch comedy. It's I'm just a fan of comedy.
I've seen some Groundling shows, and I took a class there, but it was like over Zoom.
Yeah,
That's a little that's hard. But when I've been to the shows, I mean, it's blown away. It's incredible.
those guys are the best. I think they're so good, and I could never yeah, I as hard as I try, I don't think I could do it, but I'm a big fan.
You can infuse comedy in your music, though.
That's true. That is true. I often try to do that. What was funny was Frog and Toad had a lot of funny moments. So I tried to think, how can I put uh, certain textures or certain like elements of comedy into that. And the banjo is such a fun instrument, and it's such like a, I listen to a lot of Steve Martin records growing up, and Steve Martin has a lot of banjo on his like comedy records. It's like him playing banjo. He's a phenomenal banjo player. And yeah, I would use that style. Like I would play a lot of banjo on the Frog and Toad score to try to have some, to try to lighten it up, to try to make, how can I make because there's like, it's a comedy. There were like comedic moments, and I was like, how can I make this funny? How can I make, and the banjo definitely has like there's a lot to it that's pretty funny, like on its own. Like the sound of it is fun. It's a interesting thing, and it can definitely, every time I see like great banjos players playing, like really good players playing, I'm smiling. Everybody's smiling. It's like a fun instrument. So it has that kind of that crossover thing.
If that 13-year-old boy who was practicing his violin every day and making up the skits could see you now, what do you think he would say?
Head would explode. Because it's like, I cannot state this enough. It is not lost on me how lucky I've been, and how unbelievably, like, for example, I was and I think I told this at the SCL night, but I'll say it again. So I'd written a song for Frog and Toad. Tom Kinney was going to sing the first song that I wrote. And so I had this session. It was like a Zoom session, and it was everybody from, because the show's on Apple TV. It was everybody from Apple TV. It was other production people, Tom Kinney and me, and I'm producing a session over Zoom. And I'm sitting here thinking, Tom Kinney, who's the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, and I've written this song. He's about to sing it. And I'm looking at Zoom going, what is happening here? Like, how did I end up here? I'm in my own house looking at a computer screen with quite possibly one of the biggest voiceover actors of all time singing my song with Apple, all these Apple executives and other productions, like 20 people, all that are equal to Tom Kinney in stature, equal in their roles to that. And I'm just sitting here going, what's going on? This is weird. And I always, in those moments, I always like kind of take a mental snapshot and say, this is a big deal. A lot of people work really hard for this. Don't take this lightly. Like,
But I'm sure so have you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think there's like, for me, there's this, which I've done in the past. I've been like, what's happening? Like, and I'm like talking to people like, this is weird. And I think in those kind of moments, that's my natural instinct, is to say, how did I get here? I'm the odd man out. And to not do that, and to say, wow, you have worked hard. You've really pushed yourself to get to this point, to where you're on a computer screen looking at the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants singing your song. Don't take it lightly. Like let him do his thing. Let him be the amazing voice actor that he is, and you just enjoy it and enjoy the ride. And so that's sort of, if my 13-year-old self saw that, I think yeah, I think my head would have exploded.
That is so beautiful to be able to say that. Right? Like not everyone, can look back and know that their younger self would
But
feel that
same to
way.
you, right? Like, I mean, what would your younger self say at seeing some of the stuff that you've been on, seeing some of the like the dance things that you've done? Like, what would you say?
No, my younger self would be really proud, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on me at all. And I find it so interesting what you were just saying about that like imposter syndrome
Mhm.
feeling. I think everyone experiences that. Yeah, we all feel that no one else experiences that. You know what I mean? Because like I'm
Yeah.
sitting at that SCL event thinking that exact thing of like, how in the world am I here witnessing you and Matthew Tischler and Doug and
Yeah.
Toba and all the other incredible people who have written songs that have really impacted me.
Yeah.
And I'm turning to my mom and I'm like, how in the I mean, granted, I know how I got here. I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm sure you know the hard work that you put in, but I think we're all just silently feeling that. You know what I mean?
I signed, so I had signed, this is years ago, but I had signed my first publishing deal. And it was like to a major publishing company, and I had just signed it. And as soon as I signed my name on it, I sent it off and I said, oh my God, they picked the wrong Mark. There was another Mark that maybe that was who they were trying to sign. And I mean, these are actual thoughts that went through my head.
Wow.
They got me mixed up with somebody that they haven't heard anything I've done. So, because if they did, they wouldn't have signed me. And so they got me mixed up with somebody else. And they're going to find this out. And oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. And that idea went through my head. I'd say for a month. It was like a month solid. And I'm like writing every day, writing music, and I'm turning it in and doing this whole thing. And they're going, it's great. Everything sounds great. And I'm going, but I think they got the wrong guy. They could not have meant to sign me. And so I had massive, but I still do, everybody does.
Yeah.
I had massive imposter syndrome to think, why am I getting this? And then you see people and you talk, it's exactly what you're saying. I've talked to some absolute huge stars about this thing. I've got a friend of mine who played piano, and he told me he's actually a piano player, played all the Frog and Toad stuff and a bunch of the stuff. He told me he was at an event with Paul McCartney one time, and Paul McCartney told him, I wonder when I'm going to wake up. He goes, I'm just thinking one day I'm going to wake up and they're going to say, Blackbird is actually not that great of a song. So he told me that because he was like, if Paul McCartney feels that, like, none of us stand a chance. Like, everybody's got this. Everybody has imposter syndrome for these things, because it's I think it's and you can tell me what you think about this. I think it's the medium that, like, we see things on TV. We're like, well, that's unattainable. That's impossible to get to. And then when we start to peek behind the curtain a little bit, we go, oh, well, we're not supposed to be here. I'm not allowed in that group. At least, I mean, that's what those are my feelings. What about you? Have you felt that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could talk about this quite literally forever. I think a part of it is like, we look at the thing that we want, the career we want, the experiences we want, and we make up how it feels in our head, right? And we
Right.
think, oh, that person experiencing that we fill in like the rest of their life, And then when we experience it, it's different. And maybe there are parts that are challenging that we didn't anticipate. And so then once we're experiencing it, I mean, this might not even make sense, but then it's that thing of like, oh, it's so hard to put into words this thought. Does this make any sense at all?
Absolutely. It's I feel the exact same
Right.
way.
And it's not that when you finally do the thing and experience it, it's not amazing, but you go, oh, I thought my other insecurities would go away, or I thought I'd feel different, so I must not be there yet. And then you kind of
Mhm.
just keep going, keep going, keep going. You know,
I
oh, go ahead.
no, you first. You first.
I've just come to the point where I'm like, I I'm I don't want anything to take away from the joy of the blessings that I'm lucky enough to experience. And I feel like that imposter syndrome sometimes is so strong it totally does take away some of the
Yeah.
joy. And I'm really trying to rework I always want to be like drenched in gratitude.
Mhm.
I think like that is so important, but I don't think it's productive to that imposter syndrome. It's harmful on our like inner child, you know?
Agreed. And it, I've been in therapy for years, and I'm a big advocate for therapy, but it's like, I I remember telling my therapist that I said, I was telling her, I go, I just don't know. It was over imposter syndrome, and it was like over this stuff that I was going through, and I was like, I don't know what they see in me. I think I said something like that. And she was just like, okay, let's take out the project I was working on. She goes, let's take that to the side. Let's put that to the side. Look at everything you've done before then. Are you saying that that was like all like in vain, that doesn't count for anything? Because if you look at everything you've done, it's a disservice to yourself to say, oh, all of this is nothing. I've never done any, it's all just nothing. All of that stuff that, for me, what that looked like for me was it looked like 8 hours a day of practicing. That might not be the same for everybody. So other people could have so much more different emotional tolls that they took on themselves, or different things. For me, I did it through physical, like literally violin labor
Mhm.
of practicing and trying to think, because well, I'll say this, especially with violin, I started at 12 playing violin. Maybe I was 11, I can't remember, but I started young. But there are people that start at like 2 on violin, or 3. And I thought in my head, I thought, oh, I've got to backtrack, and
Mhm.
I've got to do all this because I'm not good enough. And so I've carried that I'm not good enough to this day. Like, I mean, I still carry that with me. But for me, that's what my background looks like. It has all this like, emotional and physical like weight that kind of comes with that. And it's sort of not fair to myself if I get to somewhere and I go, well, that was for nothing. They don't like me. They don't like anything I've done. That's sort of like, yeah, I mean, it's just unfair to yourself to do that. I can imagine, I don't know your story, but I would imagine you didn't just, audition one day and be like, oh, well, this is the first time I've ever done this.
No, right, right. What is your why as an artist?
Mm, that is a really good question. Um, I'm trying to phrase this in a very not negative way, because I would say my immediate thought, and this is what I'm trying to go against. My immediate thought is, because I have nothing else. This is all I am. But I guess a more positive spin on that. My why is my voice. This is who I am. This is what I know. These are the languages I speak. This is a way to communicate. And I absolutely love storytelling. And if I can help contribute my voice to storytelling in an artful and respectful way, then it is the most ultimate gratification. And I feel like I'm being good to myself. I feel like I'm doing others, like I'm contributing to the world in some way, and I'm helping the world be a more positive place.
That's beautiful. I'm reading the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I don't know if you've heard of it
Mm-mm.
or read it, but it's just changing the way that I think about creativity. And I feel that as artists, sometimes the pressure is just like the weight on our shoulders of fulfilling ourselves, others' opinions. All of it is just so much, and art is so personal to us, and it's so hard not to take it so personally. You
Mm-hmm.
know, all of the noise, right? And this book is just changing the way that I truly live my life. I mean, the way that she describes creativity and ideas, and how they're these sensitive, beautiful, delicate gifts from the universe. And if we're not open and ready to be the vessel of it, they'll go to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And we are here to be, you know, the vessels of the creativity. And I think that helps with also like the ego in so many ways. It just makes me think about the imposter syndrome concept,
Mm-hmm.
because if we think of ourselves as the vessel of the art, and if we're focused on our purpose at the end of the day, which is what you so beautifully stated, I think it just removes a lot of that extra stress, you know?
To piggyback off of what you're saying, if we're not in a good place and we're not ready to accept that creativity,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's sort of what the saying. Then you'll never get that chance. Like you'll never have that chance if you're so bogged down with your ego and with your own, stuff. Then you're never like a clean vessel for art. I think that's
Right.
beautiful. I think
I
that's
think you'd
great.
love this book.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Powerful, so eye-opening. Have you ever heard of The Artist's Way?
Yes. Who wrote that?
Julia Cameron.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you done it?
I no, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm on, I think, week 4 right now. I'm doing it for the 3rd time, and that book is also literal magic. Talk about all of these concepts and like stripping you down to build you back up. Oh my goodness, amazing. Anyway, okay, middle school. When was the switch from this is my happiness to this is also my career?
Oh, great question. So, I had this moment in college. There's a well, I was walking to my dorm in college. I went to this school called Murray State University. It was up in Murray, Kentucky. And I'm walking to my dorm, and there was this guy playing mandolin. There's this brilliant mandolin player named Chris Thiele, and Chris he hosted an NPR show for a while. He's a like the MacArthur Genius Grant winner. He's a incredible, like the world's best mandolinist in my opinion. He's an incredible player. So I'm listening to this kid play, and he sounds just like Chris Thiele. And I walk up to him and I go, "Man, you play just like Chris Thiele." And he says, "Hi, my name's Chris Thiele."
No way.
And so find out like he was going to school there, and Chris is from California, and like I'm like, "What are you doing here?" Well, turns out his dad worked at the university, and so he was going to school there while his dad worked there. So I became friends with Chris, and I had this song that I had written. It was the very first song I wrote. It was a violin piece that I wrote for a girl. And so it was this waltz that I wrote for an ex-girlfriend. and so I play him this piece, and he really likes it. And he goes, "Well, what if we did this to it?" And so he starts like playing mandolin for me, and he's like, "We're doing this," and we're kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And I'm like, "Wow, that was really fun." Like that was a lot of fun to write like a song with like this guy that's incredible. He told me, he said, "Mark, you should really think about like writing music, and you should really think about pursuing music." Well, youth is wasted on the young. I go, "Okay, I'll drop out of school and just go do music." So I drop out of school the end of that semester, and I just pursue music. And I go, this is what I'm doing. This is what I do now.
What are you going to school for?
I had, this is a great, I was an undeclared major. I
You
didn't
didn't
know
want to
what.
go to college for music?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was literally kind of lost. I was really into calculus and algebra. So I was thinking about getting a math degree.
Really?
And I was, yeah. And I
Math
was,
and music go together.
yeah, for sure. And it's sort of a thing for me. And like, even today, like I still program things like I would in math and algebra and that kind of stuff. So, I was like, I'm just going to do music now. And
So he changed your life.
oh, completely.
Does he know?
I've talked to him a few times. I haven't talked to Chris. He was in a band called Nickel Creek for years, and then he kind of got huge and famous. And then he had his, like I said, he had his own NPR show. And I've lost touch with him, but I still talk to his mom and dad quite a bit. We're like Facebook friends and stuff. So anyway, so he definitely told me that he was not telling me to drop out of school, but I did drop out of school. So anyway, I drop out of school and I'm like, I'm just going to play music. And so I started, I joined a band a couple of years later and had a band. We were called Oval Opus, and we played like original, like kind of pop rock music. And then we started, like, I was a guitar player for this band, but then I started playing fiddle with them and doing that kind of thing. We decided to move to Nashville. I auditioned kind of this random audition for an artist. His name was Rodney Atkins, and he was on tour with Brooks and Dunn and ZZ Top. And it was like a 3-band bill. And I auditioned for him and I got the gig. Yeah. And so I started touring. I had toured with a couple other kind of bigger artists before that, but not anything that was like steady work. And so then I did that for years and started recording more, still writing, still doing that. But yeah, it was sort of Chris, that kind of college age, that kind of, changed course for me. And all he had to do was say, you should do this. And I was like, finally, somebody's telling me what to do. I'll go do it.
That just blows my mind that you grew up so passionate with music and it was everything to you. And was it in the back of your mind that's what you wanted to pursue?
I didn't think, well, here you go. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think that I was good enough to do it.
Well, then why didn't you want to study it in school?
In school, yeah. So that is a good question that I probably should have explored more. I think it was the program was like a really rigid classical program. And while I grew up playing classical, I was doing a lot more fiddle stuff at this point. In fact, what was funny was I was working, I think I was still in like maybe a senior in high school or something like that. I was working at a job, and there was this girl that I worked with, and she came over to my house, her and a bunch of people from my job. I think we worked at like Olive Garden or something. So they come over to the house and we're just like chilling, watching a movie. And I've got a violin, and they go, wait a minute, you play violin? I go, yeah. I play like violin a little bit. And I'll never forget, I put on Call in Baton Rouge by Garth Brooks on a CD player. And this is what I used to do all the time. And I put it on and I go, well, yeah, you guys want to hear me play something? They're like, yeah, sure. So I put it on, and I used to just listen to records all the time and learn exactly like what they did. And so I play this fiddle part for them. They all go, what are you doing? Like, when did you do this? Like, this is wild, because I'd never even talked about it. Like, it was like something I had, and it probably comes to my bedroom. I practiced all the time, but I never thought I was good enough. And so I didn't really take it out of the bedroom. I kept it to my practicing. I kept to that. I had private lessons I was taking, but I kept it really kind of, like hidden away from some people. I mean, I would go people knew me in music in high school, but my high school didn't even have an orchestra, so I never played violin for that.
Wow.
And so it was just like kind of a side thing that I had, but I ended up, thankfully with Chris's help, I ended up focusing in on that.
Well, I mean, everything happens for a reason. So who knows? Maybe you wouldn't have been where you are now if you had gone to school for music. So
Absolutely. And it's the crazy part is that if I hadn't been walking by, when I walked by, this is like the butterfly effect or whatever. When I was walking by Chris Thiele and knew who Chris Thiele, like knew the sound of Chris Thiele, and if I hadn't spoken up and said, "You sound like Chris Thiele," I wouldn't be doing any of this. I'd, yeah, who knows, be working, doing something else. And it's funny. It all goes to taking chances and actually speaking up and saying things and putting it out there. I've said this a few times before, but it's like preparation plus opportunity will equal success. And if you're prepared, no matter what it is, if you're prepared and you have an opportunity. I had written a song for an ex-girlfriend. I had the opportunity
well, I assume she
with a
was your
mandolin player.
girlfriend at the
What's
time.
that?
She was your girlfriend at the time when you wrote the song, right?
No, she wasn't. She was an ex-girlfriend at that time. Yeah, but it was the only song I'd ever written. But I had something.
Did you
like,
write it for her to hear or just for yourself?
she never heard it. I don't think she knows any of this. Yeah, it's funny. I had this song already written that I had the idea. So I'm prepared. I had the opportunity to meet a great musician. I came there and I met that, and we had a song at the end, and ultimately that changed my life. Co-writing with a great person changed my life, but I had the song and I took the leap in saying something to this guy and then going and getting my violin and bringing it down after hearing him play, going and getting my violin, bringing it down, talking to him, doing this thing and putting myself out there.
That is incredible. I don't know if I'm going to put this bit in, but verbatim, what you just said, I'm doing right now. I'm co-writing a song with a mentor inspiration of mine, because I wrote the song and brought it to her and asked if she would be a part of it.
Fantastic.
So it's just, I understand every ounce of that.
It's so great, right?
Yeah. And then the imposter syndrome is fully there of like, how in the world is this happening?
Yeah, get that out of there. And I've heard your songs. You're great. You're awesome. So get that out.
Oh, thank you. What was the hardest part of your childhood?
We didn't have a lot. Well, this is interesting because it's like the hardest part, but also the best part. We didn't have money. I didn't have a lot of money growing up. I grew up poor, from Western Kentucky in a town that nobody can pronounce, and didn't have money. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a phone operator, and just didn't have a lot of money. And so in the classical world, in violin, everybody's got these like really nice instruments, really fancy, nice instruments. I had a rental violin. I had a violin that my parents could barely afford to rent. And that's what I had. So not having any money was tough. However, that definitely made me work harder. It definitely made me say, okay, if I want nice stuff, I got to get a job. I got to do this, that, and that kind of thing. And I think it served me in the end growing up poor. And it served me to think like, I mean, and if you could see my studio now, it looks like I'm a hoarder now. I've taken everything, just I have so much stuff.
I love it.
So thank you. I really I've worked hard for these things, and it's like it's I want good stuff and I want really nice things, but it's probably because I grew up kind of in a tough way, and if you aren't, don't have money or you don't have any of those things, it's not to say like you can't make art, because you absolutely can make art. I did. And I often say that, like, if there's like some kind of flashy new plugin, or there's something that I really want that I'm just like, oh, this looks like a lot of fun, I'll think, well, can I do that without it? Or do I really need this? Or do I need, how can I create these sounds without this? Can I? What can I do? Would this really make it easier for me? So you kind of do go through that process of spending like that. So I'd say that was probably the toughest part, but in the end, I think it was like a good thing.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
So I had a guy named Fred Carpenter, who owns a violin store, and here in Nashville. I'm based in Nashville, and he's got a great violin shop here in Nashville. And one time I told him, I was asking him about violins, and I said, does this violin sound this way to you? Does it have these characteristics? And he said, I don't know. What do you think? And I said, well, to me, it does. It reminds me of this. And he goes, well, we all have our own ears, and we all approach music, sonic things differently. You grew up on the records you grew up on, the experiences that you had, which all come together and form your experience you're having right now.
Yeah.
I grew up on something different. If I have a different opinion on this, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means I grew up on these records. I grew up hearing these instruments sounding like this.
Wow.
So everybody has their own ears. Everyone can approach things different way. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that that's our experience. And what we're experiencing right now is because of the years of things we've heard in the past. And he told me that, and it was such a good, deep philosophical answer to my question. I was just like, that's like the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. That we can all
You're like,
have
does it
unique
sound good or
experiences.
not?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just asking if this thing's worth it. Yeah. No, but it kind of proves that we all have our own unique experiences, and what that's the great part about art is you can be you. You can do whatever you do. You can create. But if you aren't you, and you aren't bringing your experiences to that, then what are you doing? Because that's all you know. I mean, for me, like Frog and Toad, if you listen to it, it sounds like my hometown. It's got banjos, it's got fiddles, mandolin, but it also has like jazz, Dixieland, it's got Chicago jazz, it's got all these different sounds, it's got country elements, all the things of what I brought. And that's all I can do. All I can do is say, here's my experience. Here's what I know. Here's the music I'm making for this. I hope it works. I hope it resonates with other people. And I hope that, I mean, truly, if I'm being honest, like I truly hope that because it's a younger kids show, I hope that young kids hear it and go, what is this music? This is kind of cool. How do I learn about that? And then that becomes part of their experience, and they get to pass that on.
Oh my gosh. How extraordinary to think about what the art that you're creating is going to be a part of kids' childhoods, and and like you said, maybe inspire them to explore more music.
Absolutely. And if it like, you never know. I mean, there's like some banjo in there. What if the next great banjo player is like hearing that, thinking, this is kind of a fun sounding instrument? Because I think it sounds fun. I think it sounds really fun. I love the way it tonally speaks. And so I hope that other kids can do the same. I hope they hear it and they go, this is cool. How do I learn more about this?
So as a composer, is that what you do primarily?
Composing, songwriting, and producing.
When you are up for a job, what does the process look like for you when you audition? Like for an actor, you have the scene and then you put yourself on tape. So do you have to write a little demo and send it to the network?
Yeah, so typically I'll get something and it'll be like a clip or two of a film or a show, and they'll send me this clip, and then what I do is I watch it a few times, and I determine a palette. I determine what it's going to sound like. What instruments will be used? What's the tonal color that's happening? Is this an upbeat show? Is it a kind of a dramatic thing? I just did one for a skating rink movie from 1979.
Wow.
And I heard it and I go, oh, this is like, I'm going to do, there were certain moments that it was about kids. And so I wanted to make it simple. And so in my process of kind of like auditioning for this, I made things simple and made it like, I think I did a piano, a string section. I think I was at piano, string section, and I think a bass. And so I made this like kind of simple thing because it was a child roller skating. And I thought, oh, that kind of has it. And then I ended up doing, it was 1979. So I was like, hey, I'm going to write a bunch of disco songs. They're not asking me to, but I'm going to. I'm going
Wow.
to sing on them. I've never written disco music, don't know anything about it, but I listened to a ton of disco music. And I said, this is the palette for the film. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do disco songs and childlike simplicity for the score. And I turned it in. Nobody asked me to. Turned it in. Loved it. Got the project. And it was like,
Congratulations.
oh, thanks. Yeah. So it's this like kind of figuring out like what's the tone that we're trying to do. They're at a skating rink. It has to be fun. So that's the reason why I thought disco. 1979 skating rink. I want to hear disco songs, and that's what I did. I wanted it to be fun. So when I get something, I want to determine what the mood is and what kind of energy I'm bringing to it, and how I can help tell the story. If it's a animated thing, I'll get what's called an animatic. Usually, almost every time, it's like an animatic, and then I'll write something that kind of goes more with the action of what's happening. So I'll do it with more where it's hitting the movements of the characters a
What is an
little
animatic?
bit closer. An animatic is like a black and white, it looks like a drawing,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's not fully animated, but you get the idea of what's happening. So it's like a white screen, and you'll see black, looks like pencil drawing of the characters, and so you kind of get the movement a little bit of what they're going to animate to.
Wow. Cool.
And so usually I try to think what's the mood, tonality, but with animatics it's a little bit more detailed because we're trying to get, it's not fully animated, but we're trying to get some of the movement in there, and certain like it's called Mickey Mousing, but Mickey Mousing is a little too extreme. You're trying to hit, if you see them jump up, you might have like a little step, like those kind of things that kind of go with the motion of some of the characters to make it, depending on the age, depending on the style, but you may have some of that involved as well. But you have to, overall it's tonality. That's what you're trying to figure out, what's the tone and pace of the show.
So interesting. How much time do you usually have for the turnaround for these auditions?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone is different. It's funny because sometimes it's like I've gotten some that are like, we need this in 2 months, and I'm like, okay, great. And then some of them are like, we got to have this in 2 days.
Yeah.
It depends on what it is. I could, I have a process of how I kind of attack it and schedule time. I'm a pretty scheduled person, so I have to have a lot of things that I try to fit in where, and so I kind of have a process of how to do it now. But
Which is
yeah,
what?
it's so usually, like I said, it's starting by watching it, figuring out the palette, and what I'll do a lot of times is I'll create a template. If I'm getting like really detailed, but I have like I use Logic to record music in, and I will pick out different sounds, different instruments, and I kind of hand pick out all of these different things to program with, and it's almost like I have a painter's palette and I'm picking out different colors, and I get that set first. And so then I have 3 tracks at the top of my every template that I build. So I have all my colors down here, everything that I'm going to be working with, all my tools, and I figure I spend a day on that. And then I have 3 tracks at the top. I have melody, middle, I call it middle ground, which is like kind of counter melody stuff, and then background. That's usually like chords, that kind of thing. And so what I do is after I pick out my palette, I spend the most time on that. And then once I have that, I have a video program. I put the video up there, and then I write just on piano what this is going to be. I may play violin with it or whatever, but I come up with the basic melody, the basic harmony structure, chordal structure, and the basic counterpoint that I'm hearing kind of go in between that. And then I just drop it down. Okay, what color am I going to use with this? Oh, this would be really cool if it used a bassoon on this melody. I've already got everything written. I'm just dragging it down. I'm saying, okay, this would be cool. How can I flesh that out a little bit? And now I'm kind of using my colors to blend. Now, how do I blend this like a painting would be? How do I make this? But the overall structure, the overall stuff, I try to get that done on piano, and then build out everything else with color in the palette that I built the day before.
That's incredible. Do you have any partners?
No, it's just me doing that. It's well, I will say this. I do have songwriting partners. For composing, no, it's just me. Songwriting partners, I have a lyricist, Emily Volman, that's phenomenal, and for everything. I use her for everything. As far as like the composing though, like more like the score type stuff, no, that's just me. I kind of build up. Once I build my palette though, once I build what instruments are going to be used, what sounds, what tones, I spend a day on that. I mean, a long day on that. Coming up with melody is pretty, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's like, I can usually kind of get the feel. I'll find like if it's, I auditioned on this Caribbean thing. And so I kind of found some, like, I listened to like, what are some standard Caribbean chord progressions? What's this kind of thing? So I kind of get the feel of it, and I'm like listening to it and I'm playing along like that, like I said, that background kind of thing. I'm doing that. And then like I had a steel pan thing, or, the steel drums and pan flutes and that kind of stuff. And I'm like just taking my melody and throwing it on those instruments. What's that sound like? What's that? Because I'd already written the melody on piano. So I'm throwing these things on there and I'm saying, how can I orchestrate this in a way that makes sense to what's happening on screen? But if I build that palette and then I'll do everything with that. And then I say, okay, here's my colors. I'm just working with that. This is what I'm doing. And I said, I'd say, I've got a day to figure that out. And if I hadn't figured it out by the end of the day, the show's probably not for me. But if I can figure out like, this is what I'm supposed to do, then I can write all the music the next day or two. And it's usually pretty simple at that point. It's like pretty straight, not simple, straight ahead. It's more straight ahead to where I can, cook with it.
What is something about your job that someone not in the industry would be shocked to learn?
Lack of sleep. I think that's when I'm writing for a show, it's a lot of work. It is a monumental amount of work. Cause like I said, I don't write with anybody. I don't have any partners. So I'm just like writing, by myself. It's a shocking amount of work. I'm usually doing 16 to 18 hours a day worth of work. And so there's a lack of sleep that comes with that. I will say that like, for example, on Frog and Toad, at the very beginning of the first season, we started and it was a lot of work, and then it gradually got it to where I got in the schedule. I got everything to where I could start sleeping again. But it's a lot. Yeah, I will say this. Your questions are so deep and thoughtful, and you're such a positive person. It was a real joy. Normally I have like a list of things that like a typical interviews ask. And so yours wasn't any of that. And it was really sweet and thoughtful. And I think it was positive, really, really positive. So thank you.
That means so much. That really is the intention of of these conversations. Positive, but also genuine, you know, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about challenges. I want to talk about our childhoods and what shaped us and all those kinds of things, you know, but I think that is still giving the positive message of we're all human beings with
Yeah.
challenges and with imposter syndrome and all of those things, just trying to share our art the best way
I'm
possible. This conversation's been so wonderful. I'm so just glad that we connected, and I'm just loving learning more about your story. This is my favorite question. I always end with this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh. Let me think this, because this is a great, really great question. I want my legacy to be that I was true to myself. I want my legacy to be that my art was not fabricated. And like what you said about the vessel earlier, I hope that I can be that positive, kind of clear person that can put positivity out into the world, and that that I was me, and that people hear my music and say that was unique, that was different, and that made a positive impact on the world.
Mark, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm excited to just continue to, you know, hopefully eventually work with you and
Yeah.
continue to follow your career. So Frog and Toad is the big project that you're working on now. Is there
Yes.
anything else that you can share or tease?
I will say this. I've got a couple things going that I'm not allowed to talk about, but if you follow me on social media at Mark Evitts, I put everything that as soon as it's allowed to talk about, it's on there. But at Mark Evitts for everything on social media.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.